Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the new Pathfinder, why I think it's completely insane, why I'm going to Leaguestart Pathfinder, why you should maybe consider it as well. I'm kind of going to go through it point by point. So after going through all the patch notes, basically I assumed that everybody just shared my opinion that Pathfinder was completely bonkers. We kind of theory crafted from the get-go. We looked at life flasks and how much regen you can get out of that. More on that later. But basically I was surprised to find that some people think that Pathfinder got nerfed for some reason, which is fine. We're just going to go through it in this video one by one. There's a lot of new hype things to see here, and there's a reason why I swapped from Champion to now being Pathfinder on my League starter. Also more on that later. So last league, Pathfinder was basically the Ascendancy that you played to be super tanky endgame. What you did is you basically scaled elemental resistances with Topaz Flask, Sapphire Flask, and Ruby Flask. Then you had a lot of increased effect, Flask effect from the small nodes. And after you got Progenesis, it was basically over. You were just absurdly tanky. You saw this on multiple poison builds. I kind of just wanted to be tanky, whether it's for Simu, whether they just don't like dying, whatever it is. However, there's actually a new way to play it, and this one is more interesting for me right now because it's actually league start viable, whereas Progenesis is going to be super expensive next league. Now everybody knows the gig is up, and just getting the right setup, getting the right Flask mods everywhere is going to be pretty annoying. However, this new node, Master Surgeon, basically needs almost no support. And what does the new Master Surgeon do? Well, it has Life Flask effect are not removed when unreserved life is filled, and Life Flasks do not queue. Life Flask doesn't queue basically means if you press a Life Flask twice, the next one is not going to start once the first one ends. It's just going to basically evaporate. But the first line basically means that your Life Flask sort of gets converted into a sort of life regeneration, which you already know from something like an Enduring Mana Flask. Everybody who ever played a mana-hungry build will probably have encountered this flask right here. It's going to fix your mana early, right? Basically, whenever you get to full HP or full mana, right? If it hits here, it still keeps pumping. It's kind of like a mana regen, not really a mana flask. Now, before we go into how life flasks actually work, as a baseline, without any increase to life flasks at all, I just want to quickly talk about the Divine Life Flask and the Eternal Life Flask because both have like an upside and downside. If you're using a saturated Divine Life Flask, then you'll get 502 life per second back over 5.2 seconds. So in total, it's like 2,800 or something throughout 5.2 seconds. Whereas with an Eternal Life Flask, you will get more life per second, but it won't last as long. And that is actually pretty important because you cannot automate life flasks. So you want to have it to a point where, for example, in my build, it's going to be like 7 seconds or something. You don't have to press it too often. But just to make you understand, this is the base value of like just a flask with no support. So quickly, a very important thing here is there are two stats that are important: amount recovered and recovery rate. Now, to make you understand what these different mods actually do, I made an example here. You have a life flask with a total duration of 10 seconds. Per second, you recover 100 for a total of 1,000 over those 10 seconds, right? So there is three things here: amount recovered, recovery rate, and flask effect duration. Amount recovered, if you had 100% increase, so you double it, that is now 2,000 life over 10 seconds. Duration stays the same, but you get double the amount of life. Pretty easy. Gets a little bit more tricky with recovery rate. Recovery rate is actually not something you want that badly. If you have 100% increased recovery rate, you get the same amount of life as you would have gotten over 10 seconds, but over 5 seconds. So it makes it faster. But that also means that you have to press your life flask more with the way the new Pathfinder works, which is super annoying, right? The thing that you actually want is flask effect duration. If you have 100% increased flask effect duration, you get 2,000 life. Once again, this one right here, but over 20 seconds. So what do you want to get? Most likely you want to get increased amount recovered from your life flask, and then you want to have a combination of increased recovery rate and flask effect duration. If you think about poison, for example, you kind of want to have a good combination of poison duration and faster poison. It's pretty similar here. You don't want it to be too fast because otherwise it's going to be really annoying. You're going to have like a 3-second life flask. And you're going to see a lot of people who are going to inflate their regen that way. If you actually want to play a build like this, you probably would rather have, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 regen per second, and you only have to press once every 8 seconds instead of having to press every 2 seconds. That just sounds absolutely gnarly. Let's talk about investment. On this build that I'm going to show you, which has 19,668 regen over 7.24 seconds, what I have is these nodes here, which I would take anyways. It's very efficient life. I have these nodes right here, which help me a lot out because I'm a Pathfinder, basically having perma uptime on flasks. And I'm taking this wheel here with the increased life recovery and flask duration, field medicine. that is basically it. Later, you can also invest into a Watcher's Eye with increased life recovery from flasks, and also Herbalism, which you would also take anyways. What I have here is this right here. So that is, if we do the math, 19,668, 68 divided by 7.24. We're looking at 2,716 life regen per second. Now, if we did the same thing, but on an Eternal Life Flask, what would happen is the duration goes down, so you have to press it more often. You kind of have to have better flask sustain. But what you would get then is, catch this, 16,873 divided by 4.18. We would be looking at 4,036 life regen per second. And I want to emphasize this. This is no medium clusters, no high investment. This is literally the passive tree and one Watcher's Eye mod, right? Without the Watcher's Eye mod, you would probably be like at like 2.1, 2.2k, and here around about 3.5k. Okay, so let's talk about this example right here. Let's take the first flask. Now, obviously, it's annoying to press a flask every 4 seconds. You could probably do it on Pathfinder with some investment, but we're talking no investment. Divine Flask is going to be realistic. In 7.24 seconds, you can easily get those 15 flask charges back. So you get 2,716 regen per second. What does that mean percentage-wise on a normal character, let's say, with 4.5k life? Well, it's pretty easy. We just do 2,716 divided by 4,500. So this kind of life regen is akin to 60% life regen per second. Now, I don't need to tell you this if you ever played RF in your life or any regen-based build, but that is absolutely insane. Now, having to scrounge by and just get these like small amounts of life regen over the tree, right? Pathing everywhere, or trying to cheese it somehow, like even back in the day, Inquisitor is nowhere near this power level, right? Like we're talking absolute insanity. We're going to talk about more about this down the video because there is way more to this. But this kind of regen is just completely unheard of. Now, next up, let's talk about Petrified Blood. Here's where it gets a little bit saucy because we have Petrified Blood, which is usually used in low life builds, right? But in this case, you don't have to be low life to use it. I'll explain why. Life recovery other than flasks cannot recover life to above low life. So why do people do Petrified Blood? Why do they do low life? Most of the time, it's because of Pain Attunement, get the 30% more damage. On attack-based builds, it's probably Bloodthirst or some other reason, right? It could be whatever. But the reason it's so broken in this build is because you don't have to go low life. We have no reason to go low life, and still Petrified Blood is insane. Look at our effective hit pool with and without. It gives us an extra 13k. It's completely busted, and that is because life recovery from flasks still applies. So what does that mean? That means we can be on full life, have our full life HP pool, and still get the damage reduction from Petrified Blood. Now, explaining Petrified Blood in this video would be too long. I just want to give you the TLDR sort of. If this is your HP pool, what Petrified Blood does is below the half-life mark right here, all this HP is worth more, sorta, because whenever you take damage below 50%, you're going to take reduced damage by almost half, but then you get a lot of degen on top of that. The degen doesn't matter on this build because we have so much regeneration, but the big thing about it is we can still get above 50%. So where, for example, a build with normal life regen or a build with Leech could not get over 50%, that is the downside of Petrified Blood, we can still get full HP because we have that flask recovery. Because we're technically life regen, but not really. In reality, it's a flask that acts as life regen, right? So that means that this right here, you can go to full HP and still use Petrified Blood. Now, this HP up top is not worth as much. Once you get into this category right here, you're going to get all the damage reduction from Petrified Blood. Now, I might hear some people say, what about one-shots? Now, you don't have to be on low life whenever a hit happens. You just have to go into low life territory. So what does that mean? For example, if an enemy hits you for let's say he hits you exactly for this 100% of your HP. Well, we don't die because below this mark, all the damage that would happen here gets almost halved. Once again, not going to do the whole math here. It's too much and too complicated for one video. Just know that Petrified Blood is absolutely amazing on Pathfinders right now. Next up, let's talk about recovery in general. Life recovery is probably one of the most underrated things in this game, which is weird, right? Because everybody knows how strong Inquisitor is. But what I hear a lot, especially when I talked about going Pathfinder over Champion, is what about the max hit? So max hit is an incredibly important stat, especially in hardcore. What it basically means is that if an enemy hits you for this amount, it can kill you with your current defensive setup. So for example, if an enemy hit me with 22,465 physical damage, I would be dead even if I was at full HP. But in reality, if you don't have the life recovery after a hit that you take to go back to full in time, it won't matter. You're not going to be at max health. You're going to be, the next hit comes in, you're at 60% HP. Well, the Fizz max hit doesn't really matter at that point. So recovery is incredibly important. And that is something that you just have to learn. You will see that some characters that seem very squishy, that have insane recovery, right, are just a lot tankier than you think they are. And that's because you usually don't actually get one shot. What actually happens is there's a few hits in between. You just don't see them. Unfortunately, there's no death recap in PoE, so you don't really notice. But you will notice once you play one of these builds. Now, Pathfinder obviously has a ton of defensive options as well, with Flask effect, with Progenesis. So that is not an issue. I just wanted to point out just how crucial recovery is. Now then, there's two more things that are really interesting with the new Master Surgeon, which is Hardened Scars. First up, this is a anoint only notable, and basically it gives you increased life flask recovery, which is awesome, perfect for the build. But then it also gives you 25% less damage over time taken during any flask effect. That is a ton of damage reduction. Now, is it actually going to be as insane as I think it is? Maybe not, because damage over time usually doesn't matter as much if you have this crazy amount of regen. But still, just for 1 point or for one anoint, it seems completely busted. And then we have a very interesting one at the end here, which is Replica Sorrow of the Divine. The life recovery from flasks also applies to Energy Shield. There's also a belt that does this. Basically, the downside here is that you have Eldritch Battery, which means that your Energy Shield is going to be over your mana, which means you will have to be like Mind over Matter or something like that. Also very interesting. This is something to min-max for like late game build. I'm currently in like League Starter mode, so I don't really care about it too much, but this just seems completely bonkers. As you can see, if you get on top of 4,000 life regen, also 4,000 energy shield regen, there is going to be something broken you can do with this. At the end here, let's also talk about the other nodes that got reworked. First up, Nature's Reprisal, which is incredible now. I know a lot of people have kind of been talking about it got nerfed. You don't get the 30% AoE anymore. I just want to remind you that Balance of Terra is not going to be in the game anymore. You don't just get free Wither anymore. And for all the people who like had a spell totem in their setup where they're like, oh, I'm always at 15 Wither stacks or something. No, you're not. Your totem is going to die constantly. It's not really up while mapping. This is just absolutely incredible. 50% increased effective Withered is even better. Also now, because Corruption got nerfed only to 20%, all the builds that had to use Withering Touch support now don't have to use it anymore, and they get 50% increased effective Withered, which is around about 25% more damage straight up. So yeah, this node just got buffed like crazy. Master Distiller is just kind of a meme. I don't think this is good. It's too much like recovery that you need. And I'm sure there's going to be people who do some nasty stuff with Master Alchemist. So the TLDR for Pathfinder right now, especially for League Start, is you get 2,000 to 6,000 life regen per second. This is high investment. This is basically no investment. I'm not trolling. Check the numbers yourself. Perma flasks, you will have perma flasks with like 6 to 7 points invested, and you also have poison and thought support. The poison node is untouched. Obviously, poison got nerfed. I'm not really interested in poison right now, but it's still super solid. And then you also have Nature's Reprisal, which is a huge buff. Now, as for what I'll be league starting, it will be the Toxic Rain Ballista, but it will be Pathfinder. Now, basically, I wanted to go Champion, and I was pretty sure that if Champion doesn't get nerfed, it's just going to be, it has to be Champion, right? But after looking at just how crazy the recovery from Pathfinder is and how insanely you can scale it into endgame with Progenesis later, I cannot, like, you even get a ton of like movement speed from Pathfinder with like Silver Flask scaling, with Quicksilver scaling. Wilma's Requital double dips on the Silver Flask. It's just an absolute mess. It just kind of has to be Pathfinder at this point. Now, if you want to follow my champion, for example, you want to play a duelist next, totally understandable. You still can do that. I won't be putting out a guide for it, but you can basically refer to my old build video. I'll link it below in the description, but I will be going Pathfinder. As for my timetable, the full Toxic Rain Ballista build will be out on Monday, followed by, on Tuesday, we're going to do a full leveling rundown. So it's basically going to me show you everything from level 0 to the end of the campaign. Then on Wednesday, we have the endgame guide, where I basically scale it from like, I don't know, 5-6 divines up to 100. Then we have first day, I'll give you guys some updates on EA and also Caustic Arrow. And right before the league starts, I'll also give some updates on Q&A, whatever was the most asked questions. I'll answer them right here. And as for live streaming on Monday, we're going to do practice runs. So if you want to check that out, be there. We're going to do probably 2 or something like that. We're going to try out 2 different routes, going to see what's better, so we can then make the Toxic Rain leveling guide that's going to be the best. On Tuesday, we're going to kind of min-max Toxic Rain, so we can then release the endgame guide. And on Wednesday, Thursdays, I will basically look over some POBs of you guys that you cooked up. We're going to look at some Saboteur. It looks pretty spicy. And on Friday, we're just going to go into the release. So yeah, I can't wait for Toxic Rain Ballista. I can't wait for Leaguestart. Try out the new league. I'm going to make more videos about this. But right now, I also have to update Max Roll and all of that stuff. So yeah, until then, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.